please welcome to the stage Arianna, as well as our moderator, Jackie Melinek.
Hello, everyone. Oh, is it on? Hello, everyone. Thank you, Karine, for the lovely introduction. Crypto is still alive and well. We have Arianna here. And I guess to start, Coinbase's base has been doing pretty well lately. It's actually had higher daily transaction volumes than Ethereum, which is arguably one of the biggest blockchains out there. So I'm wondering, with all that said, are you looking at it, interested in it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the core story of Base, I think, is really one of what's happening in the Web3 infrastructure landscape. One thing that we've been thinking a lot about is how do we scale blockchains? Because what we've seen is that there's already a lot more demand for blockchain throughput than there is available throughput, especially at a reasonable price. And so from what I understand, the Coinbase team spent a lot of time thinking about what could they be contributing to the ecosystem in such a way that they could really help foster the growth of applications and support developers wanting to build in Web3. And they realized that what was limiting a lot of that growth was really this. So what is the cost of a transaction in the Ethereum ecosystem or in other ecosystems as well? And so being able to bring down that cost through Base and some of the other layer 2s that are coming to market is really what they were doing. So I'm personally very excited to see Base launch, in addition to the other layer 2s that we're seeing flourish, as well as other layer 1s, because what happens when you bring down those costs is that it really allows applications to flourish and developers to build more things that just wouldn't work in a universe in which you have $5, $6, $7 transactions.
Right. We got some blockchains backstage, some co-founders and CEOs for the next panel, if you guys are interested. But we're here now. Let's talk money. A16Z is all about that. And I wrote a story back in July that crypto funding fell for the 5th straight quarter as of Q2. It hit about $2.3 billion across crypto and blockchain companies. And while Q3 isn't over yet, it's looking like we're going for a 6th quarter of declines. What do you think is driving that?
Well, you know, I've been in crypto for over 10 years, which dates me a little bit. Yeah, don't look at the wrinkles. But I think, you know, what we've seen is that there are very repetitive cycles that happen. And this is, by the way, not unique to crypto or Web3. This happens in the history of technology and continues to happen anytime there's a new form of technology. So what we've seen is that these cycles play out. There's a lot of kind of boom and bust moments. And you can't expect a space to continue you know, with the same sort of capital investment across all quarters. However, what we've seen is that the pace of technology development and innovation is not correlated with the amount of capital that's flowing in a given moment. And so you might see a period of a lot of capital entering the space, as obviously we saw in 2021. But then the subsequent years, when you're not actually seeing as many funding rounds happen, is when a lot of the actual development work and innovation is actually being created. So I think from our perspective, you know, we're continuing to see really great founders build really important technology, and that's sort of what is our North Star.
Yeah, for context, for those who don't know, A16Z has raised over $7.6 billion for their crypto and Web3 funds. Do you think there are enough startups today in the bear market that we've been trudging through that are exciting enough for you to put that capital to work?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously we're not deploying all of our capital in one day. These are funds that we invest over a period of years. But, you know, we raise funds that we think are commensurate with the size of the opportunity. And I think we've seen really strong builders, many of whom are Web3 native, and others who are very successful Web2 founders and then transitioning into Web3, coming in and building. And so we're excited to continue funding them. And also we've seen that crypto networks can get very, very big. So that obviously means that there's a larger opportunity for investment as well.
How many checks has A16Z's crypto team written in like the past year?
Well, I can't give you a number, but I can talk about some of them. So,
estimate?
We announce them as we do them. So, you can check our announcements. But I think what we're seeing is, again, the rate of funding might not be the same, but the caliber of entrepreneurs is still very high. We actually just announced yesterday 2 of our former colleagues, which is always fun to see. Nas and Riaz started a new company called Bastion, which is really trying to make it easy for businesses to enter Web3. And so they're building basically a one-stop shop technology platform for helping Web2 or Web3 businesses be able to custody their users' assets and launch Web3 wallets. So that's just one example of funding that we have done recently, and we have several announcements coming soon, so more to come.
You guys do, for sure. You kind of talked before about deploying capital, and the speed of that has kind of slowed down across the board for everyone. Do you feel like a16z raised too much, and now it's like harder for you to put it everywhere, or you're not worried about the deployment period?
No, not at all, because we don't have a specific window in which we need to deploy the capital. So if we see many, many great opportunities, we might deploy slightly faster. If it takes a little bit longer for us to find the right set of opportunities, we might deploy a little bit slower. But our limited partners are very supportive and know that we maintain a high bar. We want to find the best companies, and so we are dependent on what the market provides in that particular time. Again, over the 10 years I've been in crypto, I've seen periods of more rapid investment pace, slower periods. In fact, many of the best performing investments were actually ones that were made in periods of bear market or slower investment environments. So there's not really a correlation between, is it a slower market? Are we making more investments? And ultimately what the returns are going to be.
Do you anticipate the pace of investments to speed up again, given that you've been through all these cycles before? Do you feel like there's a chance of recovery soon in the future, or we're going to be sitting through this for a bit longer?
It's always hard to say what exactly markets like that look like. I think in general, many founders raised a lot of capital in 2021 and early 22 when the markets were effervescent, shall we say. And I think obviously over a period of time, a lot of that capital is spent. And so some years thereafter, you start to see founders coming back to market. But that's about all I can say on that.
Yeah, we're staying in crypto, guys. We're not in the AI cycle. We're going to be in crypto. But earlier this week, I saw that Blockchain Capital raised $580 million for 2 new funds. We covered that, and that was honestly quite surprising given the current market and the investing climate. I was wondering, when can we expect a16z's 5th crypto fund?
Well, you'll have to stay tuned. We've mentioned that we have deployed less than half of our existing fund, and so I would anticipate that we'll be kind of sticking with Fund 4 for a while.
Can we expect one within the next 6 to 12 months?
Compliance will kill me. I can't say
That's not a
anything else.
yes or no, so I'll take it. But what do you think it would look like? Would it be bigger or smaller than the 4th fund, which is about $4.5 billion?
I think that's really going to depend on the market conditions. We don't have ego attached to the size of the fund. It's really sort of where the market is at that moment in time. And by the way, I think one thing that's interesting to note is just that this cycle of crypto, this slower market environment, was the first crypto downturn that was part of a larger tech downturn as well. If you look at kind of the previous ones, the regular tech market might have been booming and crypto might have been the only part that was in a tougher place. That is not the case this time around. Obviously, we've seen a lot of the broader markets be affected as well. And so it really is going to depend not just on what is happening in crypto, but what the broader landscape looks like.
Mm-hmm. And whether or not you guys are raising a 5th fund, what is the climate like for raising one right now? Do you think it's harder? Do you think LPs are more accessible?
Well, I would imagine that considering in general markets have been quieter, it would be certainly harder than it was in 2001. Then again, I'm not in market at the moment, so you'd have to say. But I'm very excited to see funds that have long been supporters of the space and have been able to really contribute and make great investments, successfully raising funds. I think that really speaks to the fact that many limited partners have seen that crypto's here to stay. There's a ton of talent that's being attracted into the space. And I think if you look at a lot of the underlying data, it actually tells a very different story than the headline numbers. For example, there were 15 million active addresses this month, which is more than we've ever seen historically. And so the underlying data points, the metrics that we look to as kind of leading indicators for where the space is going are very healthy.
Mm-hmm. Shifting gears a little bit, a16z has been expanding globally. Of course, you've been investing globally, but you are placing homes, I should say, or offices abroad. You just announced over the summer there is an office in London, and as of yesterday, you guys announced a Startup Accelerator program.
Today, yes.
So I would love to know, is this more of like an offense or defense? Given the regulatory environment in the US, things have been heating up a lot here. I cover it day in and day out, and I'm sure you talk about it day in and day out with your portfolio companies.
Yeah, so we announced our first international office in London earlier this year, which is not just the first international office for a16z crypto, but actually for a16z in general. And we're very excited about it. I think London has obviously been a center of technology and finance in particular for centuries. And so it felt like a very natural fit. We obviously have been investing internationally for many years, but we thought it would be a great opportunity to have kind of a hub there and then be able to spend more time in Europe in general. Look, I think the United States has, we're still very much here as well. But we think the United States has some work to do to create a regulatory framework that makes founders feel comfortable and like they're able to actually build great technology products here without worrying about possible repercussions. So I would say we're very excited to be both here and in London, and we'll continue to do that. But spending more time there and launching our crypto startup school program in London in the spring. We're also doing one in the fall, which will be in Santa Monica again, like it was last time. Just allows us to cover both bases, and we're excited to work with the UK government to kind of help push forward their framework for digital assets and allowing people to really build there.
So is it for just London-based crypto startups, or is it more just European ones? Who's out there?
It's for anyone. So we're certainly hoping to see more builders from London, from the UK in general, from Europe applying, but we are offering kind of applications more broadly. It is an in-person program, so folks who want to participate will be able to go there. But yeah, we saw a lot of success. We ended up having many thousands of applicants for what ended up being about 26 slots last year. So we're hoping to continue getting so much interest. And I think it'll just be a great opportunity for builders who might be feeling a little bit unsure about the market, but who are still really excited to build, to find a community and resources that will be able to kind of help them get their projects and protocols off the ground.
Right. And before we kind of talked about the regulatory environment here in the US, it's not the most favorable conditions for crypto startups. There's still demand for clarity, or whatever you can make of that. Meanwhile, we've been seeing in other regions like Asia, Europe with MiCA, that they've had more guidelines. So when it comes to talking to your portfolio companies in the current climate that we have, how do you kind of like advise them through this environment?
Yeah, it's definitely tricky, and we've built a robust team of legal and policy experts for exactly that purpose. We're also spending a lot of time in DC on an ongoing basis to help people really understand the technology better. What we're hoping for is regulation that doesn't treat everything in the same way. Obviously, the universe of crypto and Web3 applications and protocols is incredibly diverse. You can't regulate everything as if it were the same thing. It just doesn't really make sense. And so depending on the nuances of what each portfolio company might be building, we try to advise them on sort of what the best path forward would be. I'm hopeful that it's been several years since we've had any clear regulatory guidance, but I'm hopeful that in the next year, maybe we'll see, we might get a little bit more clarity, because again, I think it's very ironic, but the lack of specific guidance here in the US is actually pushing legitimate companies offshore because they actually want to be compliant. And here it's very difficult to know exactly what is permissible and what is not, given a lot of the SEC's actions have been more regulation by enforcement than actual clarity in advance. So yeah, it's a little bit of a complicated situation at the moment, but we're obviously spending a lot of time and effort on it. So hopefully we'll be in a better spot soon.
Yeah, definitely. What responsibility do you feel as an investor behind so many projects?
Oh, geez, that's like
Sorry,
anxiety-inducing question.
Down,
Goodness. I think at the end of the day, as an investor, you have to remember what your role is. So I think it's easy to feel very self-important and say, oh, I have this great portfolio. At the end of the day, I think the real heroes of these stories are the entrepreneurs who are doing the real hard work. We try very hard to be helpful at critical junctures, and the way our team is structured is such that founders are not just able to benefit from me and my particular network, for example, if I led a given investment, but rather we have a team of experts across a number of different functional areas that we've seen are recurringly useful to founders. So for example, marketing and communication. So if you need to launch a product or you have a crisis, we have a team who's staff for helping with that. Or in the crypto ecosystem specifically, we've built an engineering team that has deep blockchain expertise to help advise on things like what blockchain should you pick, or what are the technical trade-offs of a given decision. So we have 7 or 8 of those teams, and the goal of them is to really be able to help each company with whatever challenges it's going through at that juncture. So fortunately, the responsibility does not only sit with me, and we're able to spread it out a little bit over the team. But yeah, I think we try to be a good actor and help foster the ecosystem, and I think that's sort of one of the reasons why we're doing initiatives like the Crypto Startup School program and things like that.
Mm-hmm. I think the last time we spoke, Arianna came on my podcast, Chain Reaction. You guys should all check it out. But we were talking about Web3 gaming, right, and NFTs. Mm-hmm. How has your stance kind of evolved on that front, and do you see that as still like one of the big drivers to mass adoption of crypto or a big place for your investments?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've certainly spent a lot of time in that category. I personally have made a number of investments in that universe. I think, broadly speaking, if you look at the history of technology, there have been many different kinds of technology that were advanced by gamers, chips and graphics and things like that. So I think Web3 is also a very interesting place for some of that same trend to happen. Mostly, I think it provides a lower stakes environment and sort of sandbox for users to start playing around with the technology in a way that feels less stressful or less, again, high stakes than what it might be if they were like trying to, move all their money online or something like that. Exactly. So I think it just kind of gives a venue for people to start understanding some of the concepts. I think also if you look at kind of the history of gaming, generally speaking, gamers are very passionate about their games and spend tons of time and tons of money building their in-game worlds and personas, and then don't really have any ownership or much to show for it. The game's rules can be changed at any time, so they don't have kind of a permanent, stable set of things that they own or permanent presence. And so having a world in which that can't happen, there's a more decentralized mechanism for governance, and gamers actually own their assets, I think is very appealing. To me, it feels like that should be the default as opposed to the exception. And I think as more and more people start to understand what Web3 really means and what it offers for them, especially in the gaming context, it makes a ton of sense for that to become the norm.
Mm-hmm. What about the metaverse? I feel like that was like a very hot word back when it first came about, and it didn't really gain as much traction as people expected. A16Z made some bets in it, but do you still believe in the future of the metaverse, or is it kind of like just a term we're gonna?
Yeah, I mean, the metaverse can mean a lot of different things. So defining it precisely is, I think, both very difficult and very important. I think what many people think about is like somebody sitting like a little gremlin in their like dark basement with a VR headset, and that is the metaverse. I think that doesn't necessarily have to be the case, and as more and more different variations of metaverses and really ultimately online worlds come to light, then people will start to find the ones that suit them. I also don't think it's going to be like a monolithic concept. So it's not like, oh, this is the metaverse, everybody lives or works in the metaverse, and then, how it's sort of been described in some sci-fi novels. So I think in reality, it's just a series of online worlds that have different attributes and different characteristics. I agree the term has sort of fallen to the wayside a little bit, but I think it's very likely that it ends up coming back as there are new unlocks in terms of, in some cases, VR, graphics, or other pieces of technology that kind of go into creating a more holistic metaverse experience.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of the very, very hot topic, AI, they made jokes about it at the beginning. It's like a big joke within the crypto industry that so many people are pivoting out and going to AI. It's not even a joke sometimes. It's very true. Sometimes I'll pitch people, and they'll be like, actually, I'm not in crypto anymore. I'm in AI. And I'm like, okay, great. Nice talking to you. But for you guys, what do you think of it? Do you think there's a world where AI and blockchain will, work together? We've seen it with some projects. Is it kind of just a hot topic thing like we saw with the metaverse, or is it actually something that deserves attention and traction?
Yeah. Well, I am definitely not pivoting to AI for the avoidance of doubt, but I think I think they're both really important and really powerful technologies and can actually play really nicely together. So AI is very much by nature a centralizing force. You need a lot of capital, you need a lot of data, and so that kind of naturally gravitates towards a more centralized model. Crypto is by nature decentralized, and so I think it can really provide a strong counterbalance to some of the centralizing forces of AI. Actually, going back to what I was saying about gaming, that's one of the areas where we're seeing already a lot of interplay between the two, in the sense that using AI, for example, to generate infinite amounts of very compelling content for games, so playable levels, characters, graphics, all of that can be now pretty successfully generated with AI, which dramatically brings down development costs and reduces the number of hours that need to be spent, hand drawing things or stuff like that. I think that's great and very much enables creativity to kind of flourish even more. So there's a lot of ways that the two can intersect, but I think that's one of the first that we're starting to see.
So an AI crypto fund happening soon?
I don't know about that, but I think there's already a lot of natural synergies, so Stay tuned.
Okay, and my last major question for you, Arianna, is obviously things have been a little bit difficult in the crypto world. We've had this bear market for a while, but for those listening in the audience, what would be a piece of advice you'd leave for them?
Don't pivot to AI. No.
Please.
Well, the non-joke version of that is actually that the founders I've seen be the most successful in Web3, or honestly really in any space, are the ones who ignore the market cycles and just stay really focused on the core technology that they're building. Because otherwise you're kind of always chasing something, and it's very difficult to accumulate expertise and continue compounding what you're building if you're flitting between different areas. So I think ignoring kind of the market cycles and just continuing to really focus on whatever it is that you're building is probably the number one piece of advice I would give.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk, and thank you to everyone for listening in.
Awesome. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Are we going that way?
Yeah.